got you. I'm Hank. Welcome to Hamiltonville Farm. Today's video is going to be a how-to video, but it's not how-to, it's how-I, if that makes sense, right? Because it's how I'm going to change the fuel filters on my Mahindra 4540. Okay, this will be applicable to the 4550 as well. And really the process is the same for all fuel filters. The key things you got to keep in mind I'll go over, but that's what we're going to do today in this video. Y'all stick around. Before I get started, I want to go over what I'm using. It's a very simple process. I've got some shop towels here because I'm assuming some fuel is probably going to leak on my hands. Some diesel fuel. I've got an oil filter wrench or filter wrench. I've got the pre-filter and the filter for the Mahindra models. I got the Mahindra products, genuine tractor products made from the Mahindra company. That's what I will use to replace them. And then of course I'll top off my diesel fuel with my new SureCan from SureCanUSA.com. This thing is awesome. I'm going to do a review on it. I was able to get my hands on a couple. I'll do a review on this, I don't know, in a week or so. But man, I'm telling you, you want to save your back and you want to save some time filling up feed your machines is their slogan. Buy a SureCan from SureCanUSA.com. Okay, now let's get started on how I'm going to do this process. Really, this video is going to be how I do it. It's going to be probably one of my longer videos, but I want to go in detail on how you can get it done. So hopefully if you're going to do this process yourself, it gives you some pointers. First of all, I'm going to take the brush guard down. Get my lazy dog out of the way. Now in the 4540, you simply remove the brush guard down here, and then you can lift up on the hood. And that should give me some access to the fuel filters. What I like to do is I put the pins back into, I put the holding pins back into the pins themselves. That way I don't lose them, and I just set them on the floorboard of my tractor. And that way I can kind of keep hold of everything. Now, if you're looking at your fuel filters, this is where they're at. They're on the left side of the engine. You have one here. If you can see my hand here, this is your pre-fuel filter, and then your fuel filter is here. And can you see this? This is a round button on top of your fuel filter. If you depress that like so, that's your primer. We're going to talk more about that later. So I've got to make sure that I've got to stop the flow of fuel. This is, again, I'm not a mechanic. I am getting eaten up by bugs. I'm not a mechanic, and I've never done this before on a diesel tractor, but I know some concepts, right? I know that I don't want air in my system, so I have to take the steps to prevent that. So I'm going to make sure that I cut the flow off from my gas tank, or from my fuel tank to my filters, and then I know that once the filters are done, I can prime that to get the air out of the system. There's also, if you've ever bled brakes before, it's kind of the same concept. So I know that's what I want to do. I want to change the fuel filters without getting air into the system, because I think that, you know, when you're doing maintenance like this, it's important to follow all the steps, which takes me to my question of the day. My question of the day is, how important is scheduled maintenance to you and your equipment? Do you always go by the guidelines of what the book says? The book says on the Mahindra 4540, 4550 that you have to do it at 200 hours. And so this is at 185. So are you a stickler? Do you do it at 200 hours or whatever your owner manual says? Or do you do it when you think that oh, wait a minute, I got to change my fuel filter. I haven't done that for a while. I know there's a couple of people out there like that. I know, and it might be you. So anyway, let's get started on more of the process. Underneath the left side of the engine on the fuel tank, you have the petcock for the fuel tank on the 4540, 4550. You can see it there. So what you need to do is you need to turn that off so that it stops the flow of fuel. So now I don't have any fuel flowing into my filters. Okay? If you're doing this on a concrete floor or something like that, you want to make sure you have a pan or something underneath it to catch the fuel when you take these filters off. Before I take this filter canister off, I'm going to drain it, and that's a 10 millimeter bolt underneath the bottom side of this filter. Again, I don't know, like I say, I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know if you need to drain this or not, but I'm going to. You notice there's not, and I'm going to set this bolt off to the side so I don't lose it. Notice there's not a lot of fuel coming out of there. That's because I've cut the fuel flow off from the petcock that we talked about earlier. So far I've used a 10mm bolt put on underneath it to drain it. Now this fuel filter, I'm going to call this the first one, okay, because it's closer to the driver's seat. This first fuel filter has a 13mm bolt that runs on the top of it. You crank it loose, and then got a long bolt to it, like so. So I'm gonna leave it in there, but that's a 13mm one. Here is your first filter. All right. There you go. Here's what your new filter looks like. It comes with a new O-ring. Now what you're going to want to do is take this old O-ring out here. Here, inspect it, you know, look at it. Make sure, you know, but save this in case you need it in case this one ever goes bad. And then I just take my finger in the old fuel and just kind of wet the O-ring. I've seen people use other type stuff, but you know, just kind of get it a nice coat of fuel or something around it, and then to stick it up there where you took the old one out from. We've got the new O-ring in place up underneath that canister. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the filter into the housing, like so, down in there. Now this takes me, after I do this, it takes me to my rookie tip of the day. My rookie tip is to fill the canister with diesel fuel before you put the filter back onto the tractor. I'm going to use my SureCan from SureCanUSA.com, and I'm telling you, if you don't have one of these, look at how easy this is. Alright, you just simply press the trigger here and fuel will start flowing. See how easy that is? But I'm going to fill this up with fuel. One thing I forgot to mention, make sure you put the that little bolt back underneath there that you took off earlier. Alright, so now my can is full of diesel fuel. Don't forget to put that little screw back in there, because it's self-critiquing after a while. You'll be like, oh no, my fuel's leaking back in. And you simply put it back in the canister. I'm going to run this top screw. Again, this is at 13mm. I'm going to run it hand tight. And then get my 13mm wrench, tighten her down. Now I'm not going to go so tight that I'm not going to torque this thing down to 300 foot-pounds, right? I'm just going to get it nice and snug and do that. So this is the first filter completed. Now we got to move on to the second filter. Now that we've got the first one knocked out, hey, we're 50% of the way done, right? So all we got to do now is get this other one taken out and put the new one in. But this one has something just a little different than the other one. This one has your water fuel separator sensor on it. So this is a wire that connects, and you just simply have to release it. That's all you do. You can let it dangle or whatever the case may be. But also, just like, remember how we released the fuel in this one? I'm going to take the fuel out of this one as well by taking this sensor loose and letting the fuel drain from it into my bucket. Now that you have the sensor off of it, you have to actually remove. Now, there's a lot of times where you're changing or you're draining the water fuel separator, like for maintenance, you know, like, hey, I want to make sure I don't have any water and fuel on here. Well, this is your sensor. So you actually have to take it off of the filter because this is going to go into your new filter. So save this, don't get it dirty, all right? And this filter is a simple spin off and replace filter. Again, I'll put the part numbers below. This is your new filter, all right, here, and this is where your sensor is going to go here. But I'm not going to put it on quite yet because I'm waiting on this to dry. I don't want it to get dirty. Use your filter wrenches to make sure that you take off this. The front one was a canister that you put the long bolt through, remember? The second one is a spin-on, spin-off type canister. I guess that's the technical term. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But you simply take your filter wrenches and start working your filter loose. Now, for your filter, you're going to spin this thing clockwise if you're looking at it. So if you're just standing beside the tractor on the left side of the tractor, you're going to spin this thing clockwise to get it off. Get it nice and loose, then you can be able to get it with your hand after that. This whole canister is going to get replaced. Kind of like my bad knees when I'm 60. That was a horrible joke. Alright, let's keep spinning this sucker off here. And now you have the old canister. Again, I took the sensor off the bottom. It's going to go on the new one. Okay? So I'll set this off to the side. I'll get my new canister. And remember the tip that we talked about, filling the pre-filter up with the fuel? Going to do the same thing with this filter. This is what your water fuel separator sensor looks like. Little 2 prongs there. And then the actual wire for the sensor goes into this female side here, or male side here. Kind of get that on there hand tight. But this is another thing you need to think about. By the time you get done screwing this up into the tractor, make sure that this housing for the wire is facing outside so you can access it to put the wire back on. Alright? Again, I'm going to fill this thing up with diesel fuel. Now the purpose for me to do this is to make sure that I get all the air out of the system. Alright, you see how I just released that thumb lever on that sure can and it stopped immediately? Pretty neat. Now you simply turn it counterclockwise, or what you think would be counterclockwise, to spin the canister back up here. And get nice and snug. And I'm going to tighten it down with I'm going to snug it with my wrench, my filter wrench. Just enough to kind of seat that O-ring without damaging my filter. Now that I've got it nice and snug on here, I'm going to put the sensor back on. Now that I've got the water fuel separator sensor into the canister, I'm going to turn back on my flow of fuel from my gas tank. I guess the proper term is fuel tank. And then I'm just going to look for a second to see if I see any fuel leaking. Doesn't appear to be any. Something that's really, really important to do now, though, once I've got everything in place, there's a black round button on top of this fuel filter that I just replaced, which is the second fuel filter, we'll call it. It's your primer button. So what you're going to do is you're going to pump this primer button until it's hard as a rock. and that's getting fuel into the system. Once I've got the primer pumped hard and got the fuel in the system, now I can simply check it by turning the engine on, right? So I'm going to make sure I close my hood back, because you never want to, I don't like cranking the engine with the hood up, because I don't want maybe something to get in there and the fan blow it back out at me or something. So I close my hood, and then I will crank the engine and see if it works good. You know, my tractor's got a neutral safety switch on it, like most tractors do, so make sure it's in neutral. I turn the switch on to start, you know, before I get up here, and that way it lets the glow plugs kind of do their things, because I like letting the glow plugs, the light on the dash, go out before I crank it, you know, give a chance for the engine to warm itself up a little bit. All right, here we go. Let's see if it works. All right, so this job's not too challenging. Again, I'm not a mechanic, and I was able to get it off. It's, you know, if you're going to do maintenance on your tractor and it's a pull off and put back on type repair, I can do those all day long. So I think that it's important to make sure that you've got your scheduled upkeep, your preventative maintenance, your scheduled maintenance. All that stuff's important when you're operating heavy equipment. It will prolong the life of your equipment. So hopefully my question of the day got you thinking about something, and hopefully my rookie tip gave you something to think about when you're doing your tractor work as well. Thanks for watching the video. As always, there's going to be a little barn icon pop up. It's a white circle. If you click on that, it takes you to our subscribe page, and we're always asking people to subscribe. Why is that? Well, that just helps YouTube spread our message, so to speak. It helps promote our videos into other people's channels, and that way we grow a little bit more. And it's all because good people like you share our videos and tell people about our channel. Okay? Hey, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.